Hi guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the NuraLoop. Now the NuraLoop follows on from the Nuraphone over-the-ear headphones, or over-the-ear in-ear headphones. Now if you're interested in that review, do check it down in the description below. Now the NuraLoop comes in at £200/$200. If you're interested in purchasing it, do check out in the links in the description below, namely the locally link will take you to your localized Amazon store. Now before jumping into this review, if you do have Instagram, I'd very much appreciate a follow. It's at TotallyDubbed. I know it's a little plug, but if you're interested, do follow me there on that platform. So now, without further ado, let's get into the review. So first off, let's talk about what you get in this rather small but nice looking box. Well, you've got the earphones themselves, which come pre-installed with medium tips. Now it's worth bearing in mind that these earphones are not true wireless earbuds. They are wired, so in other words, wired from left and right, and therefore should be considered as Bluetooth earphones. They come pre-installed with medium tips on them, but if you do want to replace them, you have got the large, small and XL included within the box. What I also like, which is included, is these mesh little tips. Now the mesh tips over here basically are there for replacement, so if you do get these pretty worn out over time, you've got these little mesh kind of filters to apply if you so wish. Now what I really do like about what's included in the package is actually the little carrying pouch. The carrying pouch is made of really nice quality. It's soft as well, so therefore it's not going to be feeling too bulky in your pocket, and of course fits the earphones and has got a little zip over here. It's a small little inclusion, but Nura have gone a long way in terms of including that, because most manufacturers don't actually include a pouch of any sort, specifically soft carrying pouches. Now in terms of charging them, they've got a charging cable, a USB type A to proprietary connector. Now the proprietary connector connects up to the earbuds over here. You can see they only connect up in one way, so you'll have to bear that in mind, but they've got a magnetic clasp. Now why a proprietary connector? It's something I actually asked Nura about this. Well, simply because they wanted a design which was not only in terms of multifunctional, but also one that can prevent damages. So in other words, rather than a normal connection, if someone were to tug on this cable for some reason, or specifically the auxiliary cable, which I'll get into in just a bit, then it's not going to damage the overall earbuds. Also, it also gives you a somewhat more sleeker look, because it's all connected via this one singular proprietary connector. Now, in terms of the proprietary connector, this does lead me on to the auxiliary cable. Now the auxiliary cable is included. Now the auxiliary cable will bypass the Bluetooth functionality of the earbuds, and therefore means that you can only use one or the other. So as soon as these are connected, it will disable the Bluetooth. Why would you want auxiliary? Well, simply put, if you want to connect it up to a DAC, if you're on the airplane or any sort, then you can do so via this connector. Most Bluetooth earphones don't have this functionality, so it's great to see it actually included. The cable itself is long enough and should be perfectly fine for that. However, I am not a massive fan of this design. Now, when I say the proprietary connector is great, it's great in terms of having that multifunctional design, but when it comes to actually using it and actually plugging these in, the cable, given it runs from the middle, behind your head, means it's a little bit uncomfortable as to where it sits and how it goes around to, let's say, your DAC. In my case, I used a Cord Yugo 2 DAC and in order to test these via their wired connection, and I just found them to be a little bit uncomfortable to use, specifically if I was pivoting my head left and right. So my DAC is on my left side, and when I was pivoting my head to the right side, it meant that the cable was kind of getting taut from the back of my head. It wasn't quite disconnecting, but it was just a little bit annoying. So your mileage may vary in terms of your usage, but it's worth bearing that in mind. Now, aside the package contents and what they offer, let's talk about a little bit about the earphones, because I've got quite a little bit of a point over here to make about the cable. Now, first off, in terms of the design of the earphones, they're relatively of a good size. In other words, they don't stick out too much. It's worth bearing in mind that they do attract a little bit of wind noise, so if you're going to be cycling, then just bear that in mind. Other than that, they've got touch sensitive pads over here, which actually are really well done. They can be customized through the app, which I'll showcase in just a bit, but I like the fact that they're integrated, and also the fact that they're responsive enough in order for you to get controls. Now in terms of the earbuds, they have a over-the-ear hook design, which is malleable, which is nice to see. But that's when it kind of stops, because this cable over here drives my head in. Now the cable itself, the length is kind of like Marmite. Some people will really like its short length, whilst other people like myself will really hate it because it doesn't kind of dangle around your neck, whilst other earbuds, for example, that have a neckband design will do so. What this means is that it's just a little bit uncomfortable. If you gut them off and you want them to be hanging around on your neck, then you can't do that because you'll have a fear of them actually dropping from your shoulders. earbuds. Now the biggest flaw for me with these earphones is actually the cable noise and the microphonics. That's basically noise that gets translated from the cable to your eardrum. And these have got the most fundamental flaw of any earphone, and that's essentially the fact that cable noise is a massive problem. Now for me, what I found is that the little part over here, the proprietary connector, which is used for charging and using via auxiliary, rubs against the back of my neck. As such, it means that it picks up a lot of additional cable noise, which the cable wouldn't have done otherwise. Take away that little part, and let's say if I just touch upon this, that cable noise, again, it goes straight through the earbuds and means that I get distracted with the overall sound and what I'm listening to. Now, why should this matter? Well, if you're going to be walking, jogging, basically moving your head in any sort of direction, even if you're sitting at your desk and looking left and right, then you're going to find these earphones have an issue with cable noise. Now, I don't know why not many people picked up on this when I read some reviews online, but this is really a fundamental flaw of these earphones just because of the choice of the material. And the choice of the material over here and the design of them is just not well done, and therefore creates that unwanted, unpleasant noise that some people will be sensitive about. Now, next up is the app. Now, when you do launch the app, at least at the time of making the video, you'll get a notification. And then the notification is pretty much as it says on the tin. They are addressing certain issues, and these are to do with, let's say, the touch controls, the sensitivity, and voice call clarity as well. And that's great to see. It's good to see that firmware updates are being applied, and the fact that they're being coming to the NuraLoop, just like the Nuraphone, and therefore has kind of a better longevity in terms of the product. In terms of the app itself, it's pretty comprehensive and very easy to understand. You create yourself a sound profile. Now you can see over here I created 2 sound profiles, and they're both in terms of my own ears. It's just quite interesting to show this because these are both my same ears done in pretty much the same conditions, and yet you get 2 different sound profiles. Now the sound profiles mean different things for different people. In other words, you've got the bass frequencies up here and towards the high frequencies, as far as I understand it, and then it depends on what your ears are more sensitive to. And then you've got a neutral and personalized sound profile. The neutral sound sounds really tame and terrible, so make sure you do a personalization, because in order to get the better sound quality of these earphones, you will want that. Then you've got the immersion, which is somewhat like the Nuraphone headphones, whereas unlike the Nuraphone headphones, which added literally physical vibrations to your ears, these ones add almost like a bit of bass response. In here, I found that adding 2 clicks from the left added to the best experience, but this is completely subjective and it depends on in terms of what you prefer. Now, into the device settings, you can configure the touch buttons. So here you can see you can enable the tap and dial functionalities of each of the earbuds. So just show you in terms of the functionalities that you've got. It's great to see this, as I understand that they're going to include double tap function as they did with the Nuraphone, which will be coming later. So that's worth bearing that in mind as well. And then you've got the EU limiter if you want to disable it. Then you've got the ANC as well, and a social mode. I would have liked actually to seen this option at the front screen, because it's a functionality that people will be using, and there's unfortunately not a way to enable or disable ANC as far as I'm aware, other than using this toggle, whereas some other companies will include that within, let's say, the functionalities where you can enable and disable social mode, and another one of enabling and disabling ANC. And that might come through a firmware update. I have no idea, but it's just something I thought to mention there. Now, before jumping into the performance, I do also want to mention in terms of battery life, how much battery you should get from them. I've been told by Nura you get at least 16 hours. I haven't been given a breakdown as to how it would perform with it in auxiliary mode / ANC on or off. They've just said it's 16 hours or above. It's worth bearing in mind that in auxiliary mode, it does also have to have the earphones to be on, so you can't use them kind of passively. They still have to be connected because they've got essentially a digital input. Now, moving from there, we've got Bluetooth codecs, and it's great to see that aptX HD is included. It's fantastic to see that. Now, moving from there, we have then got the call quality. Now, I was actually surprised at how good the call quality was, not only in terms of picking up my voice, but also cancelling out ambient noise and therefore not overly impacting your call quality, and therefore being too distracted for the recipient. What I found here is that the earphones actually do compete really well in comparison to other earphones and headphones. I was overly impressed, and it's good to see actually that voice clarity is going to be improved further through an update following this video, hopefully. So that's also good to see, and again, that can be updated and better improved. But at the time making this video, I'm actually pleasantly surprised. Now, next up is ANC performance. Now, these do have ANC, and therefore I did toggle them, and pretty much all the time I used them was with ANC. And here, in terms of the performance, it's decent. It competed with my Libratone Track Air Plus. It didn't quite compete to the Bose NC700 levels, and was nowhere near the One More ANC Pros, which are by far one of the mind-blowing earphones that I've ever heard with ANC technology in them. In other words, their ANC technology is by far one of the best in terms of Bluetooth earphones or headphones, period. Now, that's a high praise, and therefore when I was comparing them to the NuraLoop, I could see there was differences here. Now, in comparison to my Libratone Track Air Plus, they perform a little bit under the Track Air Plus. So therefore, their ANC performance could be a little bit better, and maybe via software updates, they will become better over time. But at the time making this review, it's somewhat of an average performer in terms of ANC. It's not quite terrible, it's not quite amazing, it's somewhat in between. Whereas with the Nuraphone headphones, because they were over the ear and in ear, they gave you great passive and active noise isolation, and therefore meant they were one of the best ANC headphones on the market, and still are. But these NuraLoop earphones have that missing over-the-ear drivers, and therefore that passive isolation kind of goes, and therefore you're left with only relying on ANC, and in this case they do an average job. And now we move on to sound quality. This was by far the most important part for me, because aside the issues that I had in terms of its cable, I was very much intrigued to see how they would sound. Now, the Nuraphone headphones were greatly impressive, because not only did they have a good low end and sort of immersion, but the overall soundstage and the width and depth that they offered were fantastic. And given that you get that personalized sound, each person's going to get a slightly different hearing profile, even if it's your own ears retesting it twice over like I did, then you are going to get a personalized sound, and therefore the sound is going to be tailored to you. At least this is what Nura say. Now, the difference is with these earphones is that over-the-ear design is lost, and therefore you're kind of limited in terms of the overall soundstage. Now, I'm going to get into that in just a bit, but let's go first through the overall sound frequencies. First off, let's talk about the sub bass. It's there. If you adjust that immersion scale, you're going to get even more bass, and bass in your face, which is not exactly translating to sub bass, but you do get that low end rumble. So it's good to see it included over here. And as for the mid bass, it is uncontrolled at times, but on the whole gives you a good sort of pronounced slam, and gives you that sort of excitement that you're going to want. As for the mid-range, I found it to be a little bit recessed and a little bit pushed back. It wasn't as impressive as I remember it to be with the Nuraphone headphones, and when I compared it to other earphones in the market at around £200 or under, it just didn't sound as forward-sounding as I wanted it to. Now, as for the highs, they do extend really well. However, there is a little bit of missing clarity. It's not sibilant in the slightest, which is great, so therefore it's not harsh, but I do find that I would have liked a little bit more clarity in the highs. This is again going to be a little bit subjective, but I found that other earphones out there just performed a little bit better. Now, as for the soundstage, this is where I found it was kind of like the weakest point of the NuraLoop sound signature. What I felt that there was instrument separation, which was decent. It wasn't great, but it was decent in comparison to, let's say, the Libratone Track Air Plus. It does a good job in terms of separating left and right channels pretty well. However, when it came to the overall width and depth, even my tiny minuscule Libratone Track Air Plus sounded a lot better in terms of the overall width and depth that they could deliver. Whilst these earphones sound a little bit close sounding, a little bit claustrophobic, and just left me wanting a little bit more from the overall earphone. Now, that's why I created a separate sound profile, just for the sake of creating it, to see if it would do any sort of difference to the soundstage, and unfortunately that was not the case. And to be honest, soundstage isn't going to be truly affected by your individual sound frequencies, because that is something completely outside of the actual sound frequencies that the drivers can produce. All I'm trying to say over here is that the soundstage wasn't that impressive and left me wanting a little bit more, specifically for around £200 or $200. Now, this leads me on to my verdict. What do I make of these earphones? Well, in terms of sound quality, it's decent. It's not the best, but it's decent. In terms of ANC performance, it's also decent. As for call quality, it's actually pretty good. But then comes the actual cable itself, the fundamental flaw, and the fact that the soundstage is a bit too closed, which meant me wanting a little bit more from the earphones. At £200, I expected a little bit more. Maybe I set my expectations a bit too high given how good the Nuraphone headphones did, but the NuraLoop for me, specifically nowadays, in comparison to what you can find out there in the market, I would say go elsewhere and buy something else, because these earphones aren't as good and as versatile as some of the other earphones out there. So that is my take on it. That's my experience and my thoughts about it. Let me know in the comments below what you make of it. If you own it, heard it, or were thinking about it, I'm very much intrigued to hear your thoughts. Do subscribe, like and favorite and share for me to always continue doing these unpaid, unbiased reviews and to grow as a channel. And of course, if you're on Instagram, as I mentioned before, do send me a follow. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care and bye bye.